10 minutes. When we left Jacob, he had just left his uncle Laban. He was rich. He had 2 companies of people at the riverbank, and he just reminded God of his promise because he was going home after 20 years with his uncle to meet up with his brother who he stole the birthright from. Very little commentary today. We have 1,300 words. He made camp and put together some gifts for Esau, hoping it might loosen him up a bit, Jacob. Jacob put the gifts together. He separated 200 female goats, 20 male goats, 200 ewes, 20 rams, 30 milking camels and their colts, 40 cows, 10 bulls, finally 20 female and 10 male donkeys. He set them up in individual herds and sent them away one by one towards Esau with a space between each herd. He instructed his hands driving the herds like this: when you see Esau, and he asked you, whose animals are these? You are to reply, they are your brother Jacob's, and he has sent them ahead as a gift for you. And he is coming behind us. So 9 separate herds set off. And then he sent all the rest of his people ahead of him, and he stayed on the other side of the river. And he camped alone that night. A man came and wrestled with Jacob all night. After wrestling all night, there was no clear winner. The man said, let me go. And Jacob said, not until you bless me. And Jacob said, not until you bless me. Then the man answered, what's your name? And he said, it's Jacob. And the man continued, now your name is Israel, because you have wrestled with God and with man, and you have prevailed. Jacob felt like the man was God. The man injured Jacob's hip with a touch at the end of the wrestling match. Jacob crossed over the next morning after that wrestling match. When he got to his camp, he could see Esau and his 400 men raising dust on the horizon. He arranged his family with the maids and their sons in front, then Leah and her children, and then finally Rachel and Joseph in the rear. Jacob went out in front of the whole procession. When he met Esau, he bowed down to the ground 7 times. Esau ran up to him. They hugged and kissed and cried together. Esau said, Jacob, you have a big family. After he met everyone, Esau said, Jacob, I appreciate all the cattle you sent ahead, but I have plenty. You don't need to give me anything. Jacob replied, Esau, please keep them. I'm thankful you're not killing me. So Esau kept the gifts. Esau wanted Jacob to join with him and go back into the land. Jacob told him it wouldn't be practical because of all the young cattle he was driving and the children. So he sent Esau ahead. The next day, Jacob and his group started heading in a different direction, towards a place called Succoth. He built a house there. Nearby was a place called Shechem. Jacob bought some land there and built a nice altar to God. As he promised when he started the trip. Before long, the son of a local king was attracted to Jacob and Leah's daughter Dinah. The young man's name was Shechem. His dad's name was Hamor, the Hivite. And there was a date rape incident between Shechem and Dinah. A word of it got back to Jacob, and Shechem loved Dinah and asked his dad to get her for him for his wife. And Dinah's brothers also heard about the rape incident, the 12 brothers. They were very angry about it. Hamor came to Jacob and his sons and said, my son loves your daughter and your sister, and if you let him get married, then you can marry our girls, and we'll just be one big happy family. I will also pay you whatever dowry you ask for Dinah. Jacob's son decided to avenge Dinah. So they said, sure, that sounds great. But there's one problem. We could never let our sister marry anyone who is uncircumcised. So if we're going to be one happy family, your people are going to have to be circumcised. Hamor went back to the city and explained the offer to his constituents. He said, you know how rich these guys are. Heck, if we double the amount of we'll double the amount of our wealth in one day. So all the men of the city agreed, and they were all circumcised. 3 days later, these fellows weren't moving much because of the pain of their circumcisions. Then 2 of Jacob's sons, Simeon and Levi, went into the city with their swords unannounced and killed Hamor, Shechem, and every male in the city. They took everything else, the animals, the jewels, all the women and children. Jacob was upset at his sons. He said, "Great, now everybody around here is going to be after us." Levi and Simeon answered, "Better that than have our sister treated like a prostitute." God told Jacob it would be a good idea to leave the area. His sons and all the people living with them had acquired some bad habits from local customs. Many had idols and wore rings in their ears. Jacob told them to get rid of all of it. So with a more patriarchal and conservative appearance, they left the area. Because the people in the towns they passed were frightened, there were no attacks on Jacob and his family. And when they got to a place called Bethel, Jacob set up an altar for God. And God came to him and said, "Jacob, you have a new name. It's Israel. You are going to be a great nation. Many nations will come from you. All the land I promised to you and your fathers, I am going to give to you and your descendants." So they headed towards Bethlehem. Rachel was pregnant again and went into labor on the way. She died giving birth to Israel's last son, Benjamin. Now Israel had 11 sons from 4 women. Leah's sons were Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, and Issachar. Rachel was the mother of Joseph and Benjamin. Dan and Naphtali were Bilhah's sons. Zilpah, Leah's maid, had Gad and Asher. Isaac died when he was 180 years old. Esau and Jacob were never close again. They lived in different regions, and Esau became a great company and grew into the nation of Edom. Everyone knew that Joseph was Israel's favorite son. He displayed his love by giving Joseph a resplendent, multicolored tunic. Israel's other sons didn't get along well with Joseph because Joseph delivered a bad report about them to his father. Things got worse between Joseph and his brothers when Joseph started having dreams. In one dream, he and his brothers were making piles of wheat in the field, and Joseph's pile was the biggest. The brothers' piles bowed down to Joseph's pile. In another dream, 11 stars and the sun and moon were bowing down to Joseph. Joseph told his dad about this one, and even Israel, now Jacob had changed his name to Israel, was offended. "So you think even your mother and I are going to bow down to you?" But Israel did remember Joseph's dream. Israel's Jacob. I get it messed up. One day, Israel told Joseph to go to the fields and check on his brothers. They saw the dreamer coming from a distance and decided to kill him. Reuben, the oldest, said, "Let's just throw him into this deep pit, then we'll think of something." Reuben was planning to come back and save him later. The brothers roughed him up, tore off his fancy jacket, threw him into the pit with no food or water. Then they sat down to eat. A caravan of traders came by heading for Egypt. Judah suggested they sell Joseph to the caravan. Everyone agreed, because they wouldn't have to feel guilty about killing their own brother. The price for Joseph was 20 shekels of silver. To create their alibi, Joseph's fancy coat was covered with animal blood and torn to make it look as if a lion killed him. When poor Reuben returned, Joseph was sold and gone. Reuben had no choice but to go along with the plan. Jacob suffered bitterly when he heard the story of Joseph's death and nearly died from grief. And we'll pick the story up there tomorrow, or next, installment.